Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive. And today we're tackling something pretty crucial in the world of Kubernetes, and that's autoscaling.
Right.
Now I know this is something you've been wanting to explore more deeply, so
Oh,
we're gonna unpack how quickly Kubernetes can actually adapt to like sudden traffic changes,
Yeah.
and then also what its overall traffic handling capabilities are like.
Yeah.
So to guide us through this whole thing, we have this great article titled
Okay.
Understanding Kubernetes Autoscaling Speed and Traffic Capacity.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area,
Yeah,
especially when you consider that Kubernetes isn't just scaling your application,
right.
it's scaling the entire infrastructure underneath it as well.
Yeah, so like we're talking about scaling those pods,
Mm-hmm.
the individual containers that run parts of your application, but then also those nodes, the virtual machines that host them.
Exactly. Think of it like a busy restaurant.
Okay.
Scaling pods is like adding more tables to seat more diners.
I like
Right. While scaling nodes is like expanding the entire restaurant to
Okay.
fit in even larger crowds.
I got it. So now the article mentions pod level autoscaling being super fast.
Oh, yeah.
Less than a minute to scale out.
Yeah.
That's impressive, right?
It is, and that speed is largely due to what's called the Horizontal Pod Autoscaler, or HPA for short. This HPA is constantly monitoring your pods for things like resource usage, CPU memory, and so on.
Okay.
And it automatically adjusts the number of pods to match the demand.
So if things start to get really busy and like CPU usage starts to go through the roof, the HPA steps in,
Yep.
spins up more pods to share the load.
Exactly. And then if things calm down, it scales back down to conserve those resources.
Okay.
It's all about finding that sweet spot between being responsive but also efficient.
Yeah, but then what happens in those situations where you have like a bunch of pods
Okay.
all needing resources at the same time?
Sure. It's like having a rush hour on your servers. So how does Kubernetes deal with those high demand scenarios?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. How does it handle that?
Well, that's where priority class comes into play.
Okay.
It's essentially a system that lets you prioritize your pods,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that the most critical ones, like those handling payment processing
Right.
or user logins,
Yeah.
get the resources they need first, even during those peak traffic times.
It's like a triage system.
Exactly like in a hospital,
Gotcha.
where the most urgent cases get seen first.
That makes sense.
Right.
So even when resources are stretched thin,
Yeah.
you can make sure those essential parts of your app keep running smoothly.
Precisely.
But wouldn't it be even better if you could like anticipate those traffic surges and have the resources ready to go before they hit?
Absolutely. And that's where what's called pinned and prescaled HPA come in.
Okay.
So pinned ensures that your pods are scheduled on specific nodes,
Mm-hmm.
which can be really good for performance reasons.
Yeah, okay.
And then prescaled HPA maintains a minimum number of pods. Okay. Even when traffic is low.
So it's like a proactive way to make sure your app can handle even the most unexpected spikes.
Yeah, exactly. Like imagine if you're having an online flash sale
Yeah.
or a product launch,
Big traffic.
huge traffic.
Yeah.
And if your application's not ready,
It could crash.
it could be crippled.
Yeah.
So yeah, being proactive with scaling is essential.
So crucial. I'm seeing that now.
Yeah. And one thing to remember is
Yeah.
priority class is really helpful,
Uh-huh.
but it's not a magic solution.
Okay.
There might be times when the system is completely overloaded,
Right.
and even prioritizing might not be enough.
So it helps manage the flow, but you need to be aware of its limits.
Precisely.
Okay, that makes sense. This whole concept of pre-scaling both pods and nodes
Yeah.
feels like a smart move for anyone dealing with like unpredictable traffic.
It is. It's like having a backup generator ready to go if the power goes out.
Right.
You might not need it all the time,
Yeah.
but when you do,
You're happy you have it.
you're going to be thankful.
Exactly. But remember, overall traffic capacity
Right.
isn't just about like the number of pods you have.
Uh-huh.
It's about how much traffic each individual pod can actually handle.
Exactly.
So it's about finding that balance
Yes.
between maximizing your resource efficiency,
Yeah.
but also making sure you have enough capacity to meet those peak demands.
It's a balancing act,
Yeah,
but getting it right can make all the difference for your app's performance and reliability.
for sure. Okay, so we've talked about scaling pods.
Right.
But what happens when you've like scaled your pods to the max
Okay.
and you're still hitting those capacity limits?
Mm-hmm.
That's where node level autoscaling comes in.
Exactly. We're shifting from adding more tables
Right.
to like building a whole new wing onto our restaurant.
Okay.
So instead of just adding more pods,
Yeah.
now we're scaling those virtual machines in themselves, the nodes that are housing all those pods.
Gotcha. But that's got to take way longer than just adding more pods, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Spinning up entire new servers in the cloud.
Yeah, that can take a few minutes.
Yeah.
Which can seem like forever when you're dealing with like a sudden traffic surge.
Especially if you weren't prepared for it.
Yeah, the exact time it takes.
Yeah.
Really depends on like your cloud provider and the types of servers you need.
So how do you prepare for those situations where you know you're going to get a huge spike in traffic?
Okay.
Like you've got a major marketing campaign coming up.
Right. Well, one strategy is what's called over-provisioning.
Okay.
It's kind of like having this reserve fleet of servers just waiting to be deployed.
Okay.
So then when that like traffic tsunami hits,
right,
you've got this instant capacity ready to go.
Oh, I like that. So it's like having extra lanes on a highway.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you can just open up during rush hour.
Yeah. You're essentially minimizing that lag time by having the resources prepped and ready.
That's smart. But even with over-provisioning, spinning up new nodes still takes time, right?
It does, but there are these new technologies coming out that are trying to make node scaling faster and more efficient.
Okay.
One really exciting one is called Carpenter.
Carpenter, okay.
It's an open source project that aims to completely revolutionize node provisioning.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, imagine Carpenter as this like super efficient construction crew that can build those server wings incredibly fast.
Okay.
It's designed to be much more responsive than traditional node scaling methods.
Really? How fast are we talking?
In some cases, we're talking provisioning nodes in seconds.
Seconds?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's a huge jump forward in terms of speed.
Where does Carpenter really excel compared to, like, traditional methods?
One area is handling really dynamic workloads.
Okay.
So think about applications that see these, like, extreme fluctuations in traffic.
Like e-commerce sites during big sales?
Yeah, exactly. Or gaming platforms during peak hours.
Okay, so Carpenter can just quickly spin up those nodes to handle those bursts.
Yeah.
And then just as quickly scale them back down when things quiet down.
Precisely. It's incredibly efficient.
Yeah. Are there any, like, limitations or downsides to using it?
Well, like any technology, Carpenter isn't a one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay.
For example, it might not be the best fit for applications with very stable traffic patterns, where the overhead of its dynamic provisioning wouldn't really be worth it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's still pretty new.
Okay.
So there's a bit of a learning curve to set it up and configure it correctly.
So Carpenter is a powerful tool.
Yeah.
But you need to think carefully about your needs and traffic patterns.
Absolutely. And remember that Kubernetes gives you this whole toolkit for managing both pod level and node level scaling. So you can fine-tune your approach to perfectly match what your application needs.
So whether you're dealing with these like sudden bursts of traffic or more steady, predictable growth, Kubernetes offers a way to keep your application responsive and resilient.
Exactly. It's like having this team of expert traffic controllers constantly monitoring the flow, making adjustments to keep everything running smoothly.
So we've talked about pre-scaling pods. We've talked about pre-scaling nodes to handle those traffic surges. But what about pre-scaling the application code itself?
Now, that's interesting. You're going beyond just infrastructure scaling and into this realm of application-level optimization.
Right.
It's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
And potentially really powerful.
Could you have like different versions of your code?
Okay.
Each one optimized for a specific traffic load and then like dynamically switch between them on the fly?
It's like having a toolbox with different wrenches.
Yeah.
Each one for a specific bolt size.
Yeah.
You wouldn't use a huge wrench for a tiny screw.
Exactly. So if you could dynamically adjust your application code to match the current traffic demands, you could get even better efficiency and responsiveness.
Absolutely. And that's where things get really exciting. You start blurring the lines between traditional infrastructure scaling and application design.
Wow.
It's a whole new frontier in achieving truly adaptive and scalable applications.
This whole conversation has really like blown my mind when it comes to Kubernetes autoscaling.
Yeah.
It's like we've peeled back all these layers, revealing more and more complexity with each one.
It really shows how far we've come in container orchestration.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gone from manually configuring servers to this system that can manage thousands of containers and servers.
Yeah.
All while making sure our applications are up and running, no matter what kind of demand they're facing.
Yeah, it's a long way from those days of like frantically restarting servers and doing all that late night troubleshooting when traffic would suddenly spike.
Yeah, Kubernetes has definitely changed the game.
For sure. So for anyone listening who wants to take their Kubernetes skills to that next level, where do you recommend they start?
I'd say jump into some practical experimentation.
Okay.
Try different auto-scaling configurations.
Mm-hmm.
Play around with priority class settings.
Okay.
Explore Carpenter for node scaling.
Yeah.
And just see what works best for their applications and their traffic patterns.
Right.
There's no substitute for hands-on experience.
It's like learning an instrument.
Exactly.
You can read all the books, watch all the tutorials, but you only really learn by actually playing.
Exactly.
And don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Yeah.
As we've seen, the possibilities for optimizing scalability are pretty much endless.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to challenge those assumptions.
Right.
Experiment with new approaches.
Yeah.
And just push those boundaries of what you thought was possible.
Kubernetes is a really powerful tool.
It is.
And with a little creativity and a willingness to explore, you can build some truly amazing, highly scalable applications.
You can. And remember, it's a journey of continuous improvement.
Right.
The more you learn, the more you experiment, the better you'll become at orchestrating your applications for peak performance.
You'll become like a maestro.
Yeah, a maestro of scalability.
Okay.
Conducting your applications to handle any kind of traffic symphony.
That's a great way to put it.
Right?
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Kubernetes auto-scaling.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep scaling.